How do you actually figure out what camera you need, especially if you're brand new to making vids? If you're just starting out, if you're a beginner, we all got to start somewhere. What camera do you actually need? For some, it might be something like this. This is being shot on the Sony ZV-E1, but this is kind of the most expensive camera that we're going to talk about today because there are other and arguably maybe better options for you, and there's a whole bunch of reasons you mightn't even need something like the Sony ZV-E1. For some, it could be actually something what is one of the most popular and arguably best cameras that's out there at the moment. This is the Osmo Pocket 3 right now, which is not as expensive as the Sony ZV-E1, but then again, would something like this be for you? Or you might have something like the GoPro Hero 12 Black, arguably the best GoPro to date. But all of these cameras, and of course you obviously have camera in your phone, but we're not going to talk about that today. All of these cameras are some of the most popular cameras out there, and they're probably some of the best beginner cameras depending on what you want to do. All of these cameras, let me come into the light. All of these cameras, Sony ZV-E1 right now, are on out of the box settings. We are talking auto everything, okay? There's no fancy filters, there's no fancy modes. The Sony ZV-E1 is on program auto, which means it does the aperture and it does the shutter speed all by itself. And it is the exact same for the Osmo Pocket 3. We're not talking no HLG or D-Log color profiles. Same goes for the GoPro Hero 12 Black. We are not talking GoPro Log or any crazy bit rates. We are talking the bog standard settings right out of the box. So for the GoPro, that's 5.3K. Everything is on auto. For the DJI Osmo Pocket 3, we are shooting in 4K. Everything is on auto. Because when you start out making videos, no matter what it is, you always start at the beginning. Like all of us, we started at 0. And we have no time or brain capacity to figure out the settings. We want to get our new toy out. We want to start playing around. We want to start shooting video, uploading stuff to YouTube or Instagram or TikTok or wherever, just to get the ball rolling. You don't care about those settings. And some of the biggest and best, most viral videos in the world, you really think that the folks who made some of the biggest videos in the world with tens and 20 and millions of views, you really think they were like, what ND filter should I use today? Did we set the white balance correctly? Are we shooting in 4K or 5K? Are we going to recrop and post? Yeah, none of them cared about any of that. And that's probably a point we're going to come back to in a while, because in auto mode, settings for the best part don't matter. You've seen already all of the auto settings here. The GoPro handles exposure really well. The Osmo Pocket 3 handles it really well. The sun is behind me there. We're still got, you know, we're not going to mention dynamic range, but I'm still kind of looking handsome. But auto settings work for people starting out, and if it's run and gun stuff, who really gives a shit about ND filters or shutter speeds or any of that other stuff? By now, even on the early stages of this video, you have seen probably a fairly substantial difference between something like the Osmo Pocket 3. The Sony ZV-E1, which just looking at the screen right now seems really dark, not a good look. And the GoPro Hero 12 Black. Now, probably the biggest difference that everybody is seeing is right now, because on the GoPro Hero 12 Black, yeah, there is no blurry background, there is no bokeh, and for beginners starting out, that really kind of, let's call it like it is, it just makes you feel not like a beginner. And compared to something like the Osmo Pocket 3, see, you got that blurry background, so we've got that separation, that depth, and that makes us look like pros. And then the Sony ZV-E1, well, you saw what that looked like because it's way too dark, but there's a reason for that. The real world doesn't run on manual modes all the time, doesn't run with ND filters and cinematic motion blur. We don't have fancy mics, as you can hear with the wind. No, we have just the onboard, basically everything that you get in the box. That's all you have. But settings are important. Because, well, let's be honest, you gotta get the belt on and learn to drive and start the ignition before you do anything else. Yep, all of that was shot in auto. Tiny little sequence, so settings don't really matter
especially when you're starting out. Just learn to drive the car, and then all that other stuff can come at a later stage, because there's far more important questions that you should be asking. Like, am I going to hit this car? No. Okay.
And one of those questions might be, oh, what will people think I'm shooting it on? Is it the Osmo Pocket 3? Or will people think I'm cheaping out and just like, oh, will they really want me to be shooting like something, video on the Sony ZV-E1 or the GoPro? It doesn't matter. Because once you get this question out of your head and actually never ask it again, what will people think I'm shooting it on? Nobody cares. Nobody even cares what shoes you're wearing, okay? So just forget about that. In the same breath, nobody cares if you're editing on Premiere or Final Cut or CapCut or, I don't know, everything else on your phone. Nobody cares. They'll pretend they care, but they don't. So, the real important questions. What are you actually going to be doing with the camera? That's the first and the most important question. Will it be a case of, and over here we have a wonderful blue sky up there, and it's sunshine and rainbows and beautiful things, and it's marvelous, and there is the river, the ocean. It's a river. So the Osmo Pocket 3 fits into the travel niche quite well. Fits into a lot of other niches too, but there's one huge big reason that the Osmo Pocket 3 is a huge winner if you're going to do travel vlogs, and that's because it is absolutely tiny. This will fit in your pocket. Something else that will fit into your pocket and will also kind of do well for travel vlogs is the GoPro Hero 12 Black, or indeed any of the kind of more recent GoPros like the 10 or the 11 or even the 8 or the 9. So that's a big win. But here's the thing with something like the GoPro and the Osmo Pocket 3. You're always going to be getting wide shots. Wide, wide, wide. You can make them wider by stretching out a mile or putting the Osmo Pocket 3 or the GoPro on the selfie stick, and that's all fine. So it's wide, 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 wide. If that's your jam, then this shake, then that's all good. However, with something like the Sony ZV-E1, this gives you crazy flexibility, except you can't really show it now because I didn't bring out a whole bag of lenses. This is the Sony 20mm 1.8. So this is the biggest camera of all of them. So for the travel niche, it's amazing that you can get those compressed looking shots, but you've got to bring at least 1 or 2 or maybe 3 or 4 or 5, or actually, yeah, you probably bring 8 lenses because you've no idea what you're going to shoot and when you will need that super huge 600mm lens. And let's face it, it's hard enough to get into a car, let alone a plane, with a whole bag of lenses that you have to drag with you. Invariably, you're going to forget a lens cap behind, it's going to be lost, and yeah, so if you're kind of cool with everything being wide all the time or wider, then the GoPro Hero 12 has one thing that I'm going to show you that this doesn't have without expense, and a Sony ZV-E1 certainly doesn't have without expense. And that, my friends, is, well, we can put the GoPro underwater quite easily, and it I've just wet my shoes. I'm soaked. Anyway, you can wet this bad boy and it will work as happily as it did above land as under. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but either way it's waterproof. Plus there is one bad thing, and I don't know how bad it is. Once the GoPro gets wet, the actual microphones also get wet, and they take a couple of minutes to a while trying to dry it out, so the audio is going to sound not the best. Now, besides travel vlogging, there's loads of other things. You'll be making normal vlogs, you'll be talking head videos, whatever the case may be, but for a lot of folks, how stable their footage really is a big, big deal. The GoPro Hero 12, for example, does stabilization via electronic code. It uses an algorithm to keep everything steady, which is amazing once it works, and you need good light. It falls apart at night. The Sony ZV-E1, for example, is, well, that now is on not the dynamic mode, which is a crop in and it's a bit of a pro feature, but it's just like active steady shot, and this is kind of what it looks like. And I have no idea what the auto shutter speed is doing, but this is what it looks like. And then the Osmo
3 is a mechanical gimbal, which means it's not reliant on any algorithms or shutter speeds or anything of the sort. It is going to keep the footage as steady as you can. So think of this as a baby little RS Pro, the DJI big boy gimbal, and it's mechanical, so you never have to worry about anything. So your footage is going to be super smooth straight out of the box. Now with any gimbal, you can't just be bouncing around like a crazy thing. You gotta kind of ninja walk a little bit, but because it's a mechanical gimbal compared to this, it just works. Big thing to remember here is audio is really, really important. Look, let's call it like it is. People watch videos with their ears. If the audio is really bad, they are gone faster if the video quality is really bad. What does that mean? At some point, you will probably start getting a microphone. Now, that's not a beginner-friendly thing because there's so many mics out there, but it's important to buy a camera or think about a camera that you can actually plug a microphone into. So the GoPro, you can with a little bit of hassle. Sony ZV-E1, you can plug a mic in, and the Osmo Pocket 3, you can plug a USB-C mic in as well. So if you are buying a camera, whether it's one of these or anything else, just keep in mind, sooner rather than later, you'll want to get better audio. Can the camera take a mic? Can the camera take a fall? Durability is something else. So depending on what you're doing, then if this really expensive camera takes a fall, it's going to be in trouble. You're looking at smashed lens at the very least. If you have a cage on it, it might protect the body. It's not going to protect the lens. The GoPro Hero 12, all the GoPro lines, if you put these in a cage, they are built like tanks. So this is the most durable, and I'm shooting this on the Osmo Pocket 3, which to me is probably the least durable camera of all, simply because of the gimbal. Yes, the gimbal, that's a problem, because if this falls, you could be in a whole lot of trouble. And yeah, you can get your DJI refresh thing where you can send it back and pay a little few quid and get a new one, but thing is, if this falls, the gimbal on this camera on the Osmo Pocket 3 is probably the most important thing. And having experience of the original Osmo Pocket, it's not as durable as you might think, although some folks in the comments in recent videos have said, you know what, it's taken a few falls and it's okay. But that's something else, depending on how heavy-handed you are, or depending on the type of stuff that you're doing. If there's a possibility this thing is going to fall at any point, even joking for the camera makes me nervous with this damn Osmo Pocket 3. If there's any chance of this thing falling at all, unless it's going to fall on a beautiful cloud of marshmallows, then it's probably not for you. Then what about talking head videos? Will something like the GoPro do on a talking head? I've been doing talking head videos on it so far, but the lighting is so important for GoPros. The Osmo Pocket 3, which I'm recording this segment on, does pretty well, but again, not everybody has got the perfect lighting situation if you're doing talking head stuff from home. So keep that in mind. You might need something like the Sony ZV-E1 with a fast lens. That's basically a lens that can leave in a lot more light. Now, that's definitely not beginner terminology. So, like the audio, at some point you will probably have to get lights. But just keep that in mind. GoPro low light is a bad idea. Something like the Osmo Pocket 3 or the Sony ZV-E1 is definitely a better choice when it comes to low light. So, my friends, that just leads me on to one last thing. What camera do you actually buy? See, here's the thing. Nobody cares what camera you shot your video on. Nobody cares. They just care about that they can hear you and see you to a reasonable quality. It's the same thing. Nobody cares what software you edit it on. As long as somebody gets some entertainment or education from your video, they get something out of it, then it's just like your shoes. Nobody cares what shoes you're wearing.